2. Guerrilla City. Kurt Burj, Wolf Redoubt, Reed Forest, Afghan, Turkestan, July 17th. Old. She was feeling very, very old and weary. An old woman. There was no other word for it. Noor half sat, half lay on the bunk, and very slowly looked around, at first without much interest. There was a hanging kerosene lamp on a ceiling hook, racks for rifles, rough-hewn wooden walls. A long table stood in the middle of the hut. The windows were shuttered, but a cold breeze was coming through them, stirring the long bead curtains. It seemed to be night time. She was lying on a Turkoman rug, with a straw-stuffed pillow covered in coarse cotton material at the head of the bed. Beside it, sitting on a stool and holding a jug and bowl, was Karima, gaunt but attentive.
"Noorjan, have something to drink."
She swallowed the soup. It was warm, with a flavour of meat and herbs. Then she remembered the mountains, the ice, the journey across Kara Dag.
"Where are we, Karima?"
She felt a little better now.
"Mistress, we are with the wolves."
"Wolves?"
"The wolves of Turkestan, Turkoman guerrillas from our royal army."
"Beyond the mountains?"
"Beyond the mountains, in Turkestan."
"Are we safe?"
"We are safe, mistress. This is a halting place in a wooden town hidden by huge reeds. It is called Kurt Burj, Wolf Castle."
Adam. Where was he? She was still terribly thirsty, but so weak that she wanted to lie back and sleep. She asked, hesitantly,
"How are the others?" "We have lost many men."
"Where is the eagle?"
"He is with us. I'll tell him that you are awake."
At that moment Adam, with Kasim and Zelikov, threw open the door and walked into the hut. The eagle was wearing a long silk Turkestani robe, multicoloured and padded, and still had a week's growth of beard. There were black shadows under his eyes. "Noorjan." He just stood there, looking.
"Are you all right, Adam?"
"Yes, I'm all right." Karima shooed him out of the hut.
"The mistress needs rest, Commandant. Leave her alone now. I shall look after her."
Adam left the hut. The Major and Sergeant Demir were waiting outside in the moonlight. "They are well, Commandant?" "Not well, but recovering, thank you, Major." They walked through the trees in the forest clearing to a second hut, cunningly camouflaged against air surveillance. The whole camp was protected by living creepers, growing like a roof among the poplar and other trees which grew thickly in this part of the Oxus River plains. The wolves' base had been hacked out of the taiga, thick undergrowth above which creeper-clad trees towered. The place was some 2,000 meters lower than the heights of the Black Mountain. The eagle and the survivors of his band had been brought here, in darkness, tied like sacks of grain across the saddles of the Mongolian ponies, which the rebels used for mountain travel. They had then slept for 18 hours. "The Russians think that there are only tigers and wild boar in this taiga," said the Major, "and they only have patches of it on their own side of the river. But ours is all of 7 miles square, and crawling with bandits. Us." He led the way into the hut. There, slumped in various attitudes of exhaustion, were the rest of the expedition's survivors. "They'll be all right in the morning. Nobody has frostbite. They're just starving, that's all." Captain Babanur was the unit's medical officer. He added, "I'm glad you are keeping Zelikov with you. Some of our men wanted to rough him up when they found out he was a Russian, and I'm short of sutures for sewing on any pieces that might get cut off." He was a large, beefy man with a very white face that is often seen among Tartars, and had a stethoscope dangling like a badge of office from his neck. They have all had glucose and vitamins, a non-voluntary contribution from the Soviet Army medical branch, the doctor told Adam, and we'll have to keep the lot of you here for 2 weeks at least to recuperate. That's not possible, Adam told him. We'll all have to be back on our feet in less than a week. We have important work to do. All right, call it 5 days. I'll give them meat, stew and yogurt 3 times a day and plenty of exercise. The doctor sounded resigned. He added, I don't know why it is that you people are always so keen to be patched up so that you can go back and get your heads blown off. In industrialized countries where I have worked, the least headache or cut finger and they want a piece of paper saying that they must have a long rest on full pay. Ah, said Adam. The difference, Doctor, is that in our kind of business, full pay is getting back into action. That's all the pay we get, so you mustn't stand in our way. They all laughed. The scorching heat of the Oxus Plain was a complete contrast, except for the chilly nights, after the terrible glaciers of Kara-Dag. The Turkestan operational area seemed like another world. The forest petered out into groves of immense tamarisks and huge reed beds in the marshes which followed the course of the great Oxus River to the north. It was full of game, teeming with pheasants, marmot, jerboas, and giant fluffy bustards which could hardly fly. The jairan, graceful gazelles, nibbled at the green shoots of the grass and flowers which covered the jungle's floor. The Turkish soldiers even kept flocks of sheep, which grazed on the natural hay formed by the parched summer grass whose roots were still alive. There were crops for people, too, wild licorice, sugar-cane, fruits and vegetables. The live-off-the-land plan organized by General Mustagani, the overall resistance commander of the North, had turned the forest settlement into an extraordinary place. The Major showed Adam the workshops and storehouses first. Here, in addition to repairing and servicing weapons, the soldiers had actually set up a munitions factory. We obtain from local deposits the sulfur and nitre which, mixed with charcoal in the proportions of 2, 15 and 3 parts respectively, makes excellent gunpowder, said Major Yildiz Khan. And, he added, with all the pride of the pioneer, we get all the lead we want from an outcrop of rock near here, and make our own bullets. Fires were built on the rocks, melting the lead from the veins. It was then taken to the moulds where the bullets were easily made. Parts of the forest, which had once been clearings, were overgrown with immense beds of reeds, sometimes standing 20 feet high, their roots deep in the marsh which underlay the heavy loam. The wolves, following the pattern of the marsh people, had built enormous halls, muzifs, entirely of reeds, great structures which soared in arches, reminiscent of the cathedrals of the Middle Ages. The buildings were closely patterned on the dwellings and near palaces of the marsh people of Iraq. Indeed, this part of the world had been colonized by people from there over 1,000 years ago, after the Saracenic conquest. Log cabins, reed houses, and even tents were covered with fast-growing vines, forming a matted, perfect camouflage. Even where there were bare patches in the forest, creepers had been trained to break up the surface pattern and to provide walkways, safe from aerial reconnaissance. It took us over a year to get right, the Major said in answer to Adam's question. 800 men lived and worked here, going out on sorties for 3 days at a time and returning to be replaced by fresh troops. That such a place, with a school, library, garages, hospital, volleyball court and machine shops, could exist within 40 miles of major Russian military installations was astonishing. Supposing, Adam asked Major Khan, You were betrayed, or the Russians decided to destroy the reed beds or the forest with napalm, which they have been using in the south.
The Major tapped his nose.
As you must know from your Kabul experience, there are hardly 3,000 communists in the whole of this country. On the other hand, almost everyone else working for the Nikolais is prepared to help the resistance. They fear for their families, or they wouldn't be working for the Russians at all. We get all the information we need. We can't easily be taken by surprise.
The settlement was only 60 kilometers southwest of Kizil Kala port, their destination. From there, the Turks explained, they were able to get all kinds of things which the Russians, unloading supplies, stole and then bartered with the local people. They take gold and silver, which we get from the Badakhshan mines, in return for petrol, kerosene, even electricity generators, Lieutenant Galib said, as he proudly showed off his lathes, blacksmith shop, and flour grinding mills. This Soviet equipment is often not the best, it's very basic, but it does the job, and some of it wears well. Their motor fuel is, for some reason, dyed green, and is of very poor quality, low octane, but it serves the purpose.
Is there anything that is difficult to get? Asked Adam.
From time to time you can't get things that would really be useful. At the moment we can't get antibiotics. But then the Russians are plagued by shortages themselves. And sometimes, of course, the opposition gives us problems.
Who's the opposition?
Well, independent operators. People who are trying to carry on resistance work on their own. There was a case a month or so back. Some people from the industrial city of Kunduz arrived in carts loaded with good quality grain marked Gift of the People of the United States of America. The Russians bought it for a stack of uniforms, which we eventually got hold of ourselves.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing, the lieutenant laughed. Except that the Afghans had refilled old sacks and added a lot of purgative plant material to the flour, so the Nikolais soon wanted their uniforms back. Apparently the effect of the purgative rather ruined their clothes.
Weren't they furious?
At first they were, but the Afghans explained that American wheat always had that effect on normal people, very different from good Soviet flour. The people of North Afghanistan, living so close to what was, in fact, though not in theory, the Soviet Empire, knew a great deal about its strengths and weaknesses. The flour story, Lieutenant Galib told the Eagle, tells us a great deal about totalitarian regimes and how to deal with them. In the first place, since the enemy, America, has been presented as a bogey, many people in the USSR will believe almost anything about it. Hence, the Americans are demons, and so their flour must be horrible.
But the Russians, the people, must one day get out of this warped way of thinking, Adam asked. After all, a time is bound to come when they just won't credit the propaganda.
Galib rubbed his chin reflectively. That's something which will take time, I would think. In any case, there's nothing that we, fighting a war, can do about it. I was talking about the weaknesses in Soviet thinking which come from such distortions, not about the remedies. I suppose it's up to the Americans, and the fair-minded Russians, to solve the brainwashing problem.
Have they brainwashed the Turkestan people on their own side of the border? Adam wanted to know.
Some of them, but not the majority. The chief problem there seems to me to be that the Soviet Turkestanis don't know much more than what the Russians feed them. Mind you, they don't like the Russians, and that has nothing to do with socialism. They have a saying, a Russian rat is a rat who is a Russian.
Adam said, I heard that there were masses of Uzbek and Tajik soldiers among the first Soviet troops to enter Afghanistan in December 1979, but that they were withdrawn because they became too friendly with the Afghans.
That was an experiment which failed, Galib said. You see, the Russian army, which is what the Soviet army really is, makes sure that members of the ethnic minorities are distributed throughout its units. The Soviets never had locally raised regiments. The Central Asians are a 17% minority in most army formations. Then what was the experiment, Galib? Well, since the education and training of Central Asians is deliberately kept at a lower standard than those of the Slavs and even the Balts, the annual conscript intake always contains a large number of men who are not suitable for learning technically advanced tasks. They are channeled into support troops, transport, logistics, mine clearing and so on. But they are never posted to Central Asian depots. They go to the Ukraine, the Russian Soviet Republic, to the Baltic states and so on. It was some of these that the Soviet High Command tried out in Afghanistan. They deserted in large numbers. Mainly, however, they are not fighting material. Major Hahn had made a careful study of the Kremlin's Afghan campaign, absorbing the contents of captured documents and listening to military radio traffic. He outlined the position for the Pagman guerrillas. The Soviet Union is split up into military commands. Logically, it is the Central Asian military districts, Turkestan and Central Asia, which should have taken on the Afghan campaign. Their territory borders ours. But the two of them quarrelled. Tashkent wanted to be in charge, and so did Alma-Ata. And how did they solve that one? Adam asked. By creating another completely independent command, Afghanistan. A marshal of the Soviet Union was put in overall control, and no less than 25 Russian generals were put under him. A marshal? Adam was impressed. And why so many generals? Yes, said the major. Of course, any other army would have had only 1 or 2 generals, 5 at the most, for a fraternal limited contingent to pursue bandits and counter-revolutionaries, as it is called. But the Russian hawks, the war party, are very strong, and they spend most of their time lobbying for things to do. And I suppose there are decorations to be won? Naturally, the Soviet army is top-heavy with officers, too, of all ranks. They have to do something. Who is the marshal? Marshal Sergei Sokolov, first Deputy Minister of Defense. He was appointed when the handful of rebels in early 1980 started to kill too many Russians. It was he who authorized the communist Afghan admission that there were 1 million resistors in Afghan Turkestan alone. That was to explain why the Red Army had so many casualties. Within 3 days, the members of the Sherkala Commando were moving around the camp, being put through drill and familiarization courses by the Turkestanis, and generally getting the feel of the power and confidence which everywhere marked the ever-strengthening national mobilization. With a large network of information gatherers and more agents among the Afghans working for the Soviets, the Wolves were able to provide Adam with a ready-made organization to plan and assist the descent upon the treasure. I have to know, the Eagle told the Wolves' commander, whether the treasure is still in this area, and whether it is aboard the gunboat or not, and if not, where it is. In either case, if it is in this area, we need a plan to capture or destroy it. You'll have to give me 2 more days, said the Major. This is Tuesday. Shall we say Thursday? I really like Afghanistan, said the Russian Zelikov. In Moscow it would take 2 days just to find out what day of the week it was. Don't try to be too clever, son, Major Hahn advised him, because you and Captain Azambai here are going to be among the people who'll do the finding out for us. Get ready to go to Kizil Kala within an hour.